All right, tile friends, welcome back. We've got another great interview scheduled. I love that music. All right. I'm glad to see so many folks are having a good time and bouncing around from table to table and networking. That's what this is all about. Right now, I am going to bring Dan Marvin to the stage. And Dan Marvin also has a great history with tile. Currently, he is the VP of operations over at Iron Rock, and he calls himself a ceramic engineer. So I'm curious to know, learn more about that and hear his history. So Dan will be joining us here just in a minute. Dan, how are you?
Hey, Luke, I'm good. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come join us in this networking new way and interview with me. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. This is a really neat way to do it.
Cool. Well, why don't we get this started? Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, how you found the industry.
Okay. And yes, there really is such a thing as a ceramic engineer. But
yeah, we want to hear all about that.
I'll get to that.
That's the first time I've heard that term.
So yeah, originally I grew up very close to the Olean factory of American Olean tile. So it was kind of early on in my psyche that I knew what a tile factory was. So I grew up there in Western New York and went to Alfred University, which has a ceramic engineering program. And when you graduated with a ceramic engineering degree, you either went into like the space program or semiconductors or tile or toilets. So I got, the second level up, I went into tile. And it was actually a great introduction to manufacturing it. So I worked at American Olean Tile for 5 or 6 years as a process engineer. Learned how to run the kilns, how to run the presses, how to create different colors and mix clay together and all that good stuff. And then moved down to Jackson, Tennessee for a year. And at that time, Dow Tile bought American Olean Tile. They called it a merger, but it was really a purchase. And they ended up shutting down the Jackson, Tennessee factory that I was working at. So I went to Florida Tile, and I started a mosaic factory for Florida Tile. Was there for 5 or 6 years. Florida Tile ultimately decided to get out of mosaics and shut that whole Florida campus down, unfortunately. So for a few years there, I was just kind of chasing whatever factory was shutting down next. But then I did go to Florida Tile up in Kentucky. That factory, thankfully, is still there, and their main operations are there in Kentucky. And I was there for about 10 years. So during that time, I got into more of the quality assurance side of it. I did a lot of traveling around the world, helping with different factories that were importing tile through Florida Tile. I got into the stone side of it, which was new to me, and learned more about quarries and that kind of thing. And then Florida Tile, I was their director of technical services. So I found out that Mapei was looking for a director of technical services about that time, and interviewed in 2013. I went to Mapei. I was there for about 5 years in the position you just interviewed, Jim. He was the one that came in after me. I hired him a few years into my tenure there when Larry retired. And then when I moved here to Iron Rock, he took over there. Iron Rock makes Metropolitan ceramics. So a lot of people probably on your podcast are a little more familiar with the Metropolitan name than the Iron Rock name. Yeah. We also make thin brick. So we do quarry tile and thin brick are our main products.
Okay. Nice. Well, that's a little bit different history than anyone I've interviewed yet. So I'm really glad to have this interview with you, Dan. Thank you for sharing that story.
Sure.
And I see why you call it a ceramic engineer for sure.
Well, it's actually kind of a subset of chemical engineering, but it deals with the inorganic clays and ceramics and that sort of thing. So.
Yeah.
And my introduction, I guess, to the installation side of it has been more through the John Bridge Forum and Tile Geeks and now Tile Money. A lot of these forums where installers get together. And then when I was at Mapei, I got to meet a lot of the installation community, either through events that we had there in Deerfield Beach or at Coverings or Total Solutions or some of the shows. So it's been nice to really get to know a lot of the installers as part of what I do on a day-to-day basis.
Do you find that real helpful in your job?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Especially as I got into my pay and I got a much better understanding of how tile products were actually used in the marketplace. I had admittedly kind of an insulated experience up to that point where I just knew the tile manufacturing part of it. Once I got into my pay and started dealing with the installation product side of it and the job sites and really talking to the installers about what their challenges were, I'd say that my understanding the whole system really blossomed at that point.
Yeah. And we appreciate, you getting involved in these groups. We really do.
Oh, sure. No, I enjoy it. I figure if I can answer a question for you, then, if I do the research and can come up with the right answer, then I've learned something too.
Yeah, for sure. What challenges do you have in your industry from your side of things?
So especially for the quarry tile side of it, we've seen a lot of the kind of more established tiles like quarry tile and ceramic mosaics and some of the older technology giving way to poured epoxy and some other floorings that weren't around 10, 20 years ago in any significant amount. We're moving largely into thin brick, so we're doing a lot of thin brick, but my challenges, I guess, from the thin brick side is a lot of tile installers think of it as being kind of in the brick arena. It's not really front of mind for them that thin brick is something they can do. So,
right.
I've spent quite a bit of time this year with NTC. I've only been in this position about a year. So I did spend quite a bit of that time working on a subcommittee that NTCA put together for thin brick installation. And we put together a nice white paper that should be rolled out here soon about how to do it. We've been putting together some videos here at Iron Rock on how to do it, just to kind of demystify it for tile installers so they feel comfortable. And really, it's a new market that they could potentially get into if they're having challenges with some other places.
How long ago did that start getting popular? 3 to 6 years?
Yeah.
A thin brick.
Yeah, the thin brick, there's different markets for thin brick. The exterior kind of tilt wall construction has really come on in the last 10 years. But as far as using it as, in place of or in addition to some tiling, I can remember in the 70s, my mom put a thin brick wall up behind our wood stove. So,
Sure.
it's been in the market for decades. But as far as really kind of taking off, I would say the last 5 or 6 years, we've seen a big growth in sales.
Yeah. Okay. And that's kind of what I figured, that's when I started seeing it more and more. I mean, we see things like thin brick and caustic tiles that have been around for ages, right? But they go through these trends. And so a lot of my friends, a lot of installers have a lot of questions about this kind of stuff. And we're thankful for guys like you who can answer those questions. So
sure.
Remind everybody from the audience, if you've got a question, pop it up in the chat box or Q&A box, and Dan will be happy to help answer that.
Depending on the question, I may not be happy. We'll see.
Yeah, you might not be so happy about it. For sure. What gets you excited for the industry right today and in the future?
So I'll give you a little different answer. A big part of what I've done has also been the sustainability side of tile. I chair up the Tile Council of North America's Green Initiative Committee. Right. And several years ago, back in 2012, we developed the NANSI standard for what is a green tile, green squared. And the green squared program is getting some traction with the LEED projects and some of these other green certifications. We have a great story to tell in the tile industry that competing industries don't. So, we're all competing against carpet and LVT and vinyl and, all these other market segments that are out there telling their story. Really, the tile side of it has a great story. The tile itself is very sustainable. The setting materials are very sustainable. The labor that goes into it is, it's kind of a craftsmanship as opposed to just a production environment. So we have a good story to tell on the sustainability side, and that's something I spend quite a bit of my time on industry-wide.
Oh, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, we are the original green surface, right? We've got 2 questions in the chat box, and they're basically the same thing. And I told you this was a hot topic among installers. What would you recommend to grout thin brick? We've got the pointing mortar, traditional standard grout. we've got, a grout bag, we've got a float. Does it matter? What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Yeah, and that's so the white paper we just put together for NTCA gets into all that, and that was really the idea behind putting it together. Yeah, you can do a pointing mortar, and a lot of people do. For the tile world, there's no reason you can't use the grout you're used to. So you can use a modified grout. You can use a high-end modified grout. Even some of the ready-to-use grouts could go into that joint. It's really just a big grout joint. So as long as it's capable of filling that width, you're good to go. A lot of the bricks do have a rough surface. So if you're going to be floating the grout joints, you'll either want to use some sort of a grout release product, or if you can get a wax coated brick. We make a wax coated brick that comes off with a hot water pressure wash. So you can do that. So you can float the whole thing out and then just wash it off with hot water, and it all comes off the surface. So there's quite a few ways you can do it other than bagging, but bagging is kind of the traditional way for thin brick.
That's what you see traditionally. Yeah, I think that's good advice. Certainly, I think it depends on how much square footage you're going to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Good comment here by Jim. The true sanitary finishes that we have in this industry should really have an opportunity to grow after this, pandemic. Is that what you're seeing in your company? Are you kind of ramping things up are you seeing a lot of future sales because of this?
So the nice thing about tile is it's inorganic, so it doesn't harbor any of the microbes, and it's easily washed. So for quarry tile in particular, because we make a nice cove base that's designed for those sanitary, installations specifically, I do see that as being a point of emphasis going forward. These are surfaces designed to be easily cleaned, and you can, hit them with bleach and they aren't going to change color. So it's nice to have a product that has a good story, especially when everybody's health is top of mind right now.
Yeah. And how do you have any thoughts on how we tell that story? I mean, you mentioned, that you're on, this board, the Green Initiative.
Yep.
How are we as tile installers and a community at large, telling our story?
I highly recommend everybody checks out the Y Tile website. There's a whole section on there on exactly these topics. They're designed for you to be able to point people to if you want to have that conversation and say, here's some information for you electronically. Y Tile does a great job of constantly putting out these little snippets on social media that are going to be about, the sanitary benefits of tile, the green benefits of tile. And also, if you get your TCNA handbook out, there's a whole big section in the middle you probably just kind of flip over because it's just pictures. But if you get into the meat of that in that middle section, it goes into a lot of the things that I've been talking about.
Yeah. Great. And we want to market this to our communities and really partner with like the Y Tile Initiative friends and really, push that out to the communities, because tile is such a great, surface. And a lot of people just don't understand it when they're shopping and they see some of these different marketing terminologies that even different, inferior,
right.
product.
Well, and NTCA is also part of the Y Tile effort. So if your members are part of NTCA, that's a good jumping in point. Ask your NTCA person for information to steer you in the right direction. Yeah.
And thank you for bringing that valuable resource up. The way I understand the Y Tile Initiative, it is really industry initiative, meaning there's no sponsor, everybody's working together really.
Yeah, that's correct. It's, it's kind of loosely headed by the Tile Council, but CTDA, the distributors are part of it. The NTCA contractors are part of it. The TCA contractors are part of it. So it really is an industry-wide initiative to try to differentiate tile in a crowded flooring market.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I've got another question for you here, Dan. What are some common myths that you would like to clear up about maybe tile manufacturers or the tile industry in general, or maybe just talk directly to contractors,
Well, so the big myth, I guess, about tile and installation products manufacturers are that we kind of plot to how to make your life harder. We really don't. We really try to make your life easier. I know there's a lot of confusion and concern when new products come out, which don't necessarily meet the current thinking about how things should be installed, and it takes a while for the market to get comfortable with them. So it's really up to us as manufacturers to do the training. I know you've talked to Noah Chitty. I know Jim was just here. All of them emphasize that, as manufacturers, we need to do a better job giving you the tools to use the products that we're putting out.
Yeah. And we appreciate that, Dan. And hey, I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day and sharing your story and jumping in here and networking with us.
Sure. I was glad to talk about myself, Luke. I appreciate it.
That's great. Together, we are stronger as an industry, and we need to keep that viewpoint in mind, because things are not going to get easier from here on out. I feel like, we're going to have to really work hard for establishing ourselves as the professionals and as the experts that we are. So
absolutely,
we do this only together, not alone. And so we're going to have about 15 more minutes of networking, maybe about 10 more minutes. We went a little long. And then we're going to get Fran Isaacson in here, and I'm going to interview Fran. She's a great designer and has a great attitude. So once again, thank you, Dan, and we'll network with you on the tables.
Great. Sounds good.